think it's something about the two of us standing too close together or something. How's everybody doing this evening? Yeah. Wonderful. We should be looking to worship God. You know, in 2000, I moved here 25 years ago. When I moved to those really sharp people, and I identified him. He promoted up into a leadership, and after into that, he came to me and he said, Mr. Knight, he said, I've gotten an offer at another company, big promotion for me, and I'm going to take it. I got to take it. And I was like, well, good for you. You know, good for you. And I'm glad. The excitement quickly changed to, I mean, come on, we're all family. We can be honest, right? But what do you think my opinion turned to? Yeah, I can't believe that. I mean, all that time. Yeah, I spent so much time and resources and poured money into him for training. You think it was my money, not the company's money I spent. But I was a little bit hurt inside. I was like, man, I poured into this person. I poured into him, and what am I getting out of it? You know, I poured all this into him. If I poured 100 into him, I got maybe 30 of it back, and that was about it. Because by the time he got to a place where I really, really could use him, he went off, and somebody else is getting that benefit. Somebody else is getting my reward. That's how I felt. And I was like, man, I learned my lesson on that. And to quicken this story up a little bit, I'm going to fast forward a few more years. I had left working for Best Buy doing their technical stuff. We had rolled in this new technical thing. When that finished, I took my opportunity to leave and went to work for some very large companies doing IT work. And we would roll out, among other things we did, we'd roll out these document and kind of information management systems into large companies. And the salespeople, they would sell it, but the technical people, and that's who I was over, we would implement. And there would always come a point in these projects at the very beginning, before the people signed off on it, before they wrote those big checks, they'd really want to get into the technical aspects of it. And then usually I'd get to be brought in. I'd come into those final closing meetings to help them close that deal, right? Get the technical guy in the room and explain how that technical side worked. But sometimes it was hard. You'd get there and there'd be some resistance, and and salespeople would be mad and all that kind of stuff. But I remember, and this was again, several years later, and this was a big account. It was one of those accounts where your boss's boss was calling you saying, now Brett, I need you on your A game. I need you to pull out the stops, whatever they need. I need it done. And they weren't really sold on it yet. And the sales guy was honest with me. He and I were good friends. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell this one or not. But this is the meeting that's going to decide it. The CEO of the company is going to be in this meeting when we come in. Today's the day. And so I went in, and I was the only technical person. It was me, the salesperson, and the president of the region. He flew in. So the three of us walk into the room, and they have a traditional boardroom, and there the CEO is at the head of the table, right? And I look over to him first, obviously, then I look to his right-hand man, his head technical guy, and I look, and who do you think it was? It was that young man who I trained years before. And he was sitting there, and we did our introductions, and before we could do our presentation, he turned to the CEO, and he says, I don't know everything I need to know about this application, but I know everything I need to know about the man behind it. It was the most lucrative deal the company ever did. And to the day that I left that company, that relationship was still strong. When I left and went on to law school, that relationship was still strong. So here's my thing. Here's my message in that. That reward was there the whole time. It was there the whole time. I just wasn't where I needed to be yet to receive it. Right? I just wasn't where I needed to be to receive the reward for all that effort that I had put in. And here I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was feeling let down. I was feeling like I didn't get what I deserved. I just wasn't in the time to cash that check. That's what it was. When the Bible talks about rewards, and it's good for us to understand in 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, 58th verse, we read, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. You see, our labor is not in vain, just like my labor was not in vain. My efforts were not in vain. And we're told in the Bible that our efforts are not in vain. We love rewards, don't we? I mean, we're just kind of hardwired that way. Who doesn't love payday? Right? I mean, payday's that day where, provisioning is applied and maybe you could do something a little extra on payday. Right? I mean, that's the way it always has been for me. It's the way it was when I grew up. My father built houses for a living. That's what he did. He was a construction worker. He didn't get paid weekly. He got paid when the job was done. Right? So that meant sometimes we go longer stretches of time between paydays. But when payday came, man, we knew it. We knew it. We knew when payday came. Because you know what it looked like at our house? And there was me and my two brothers and my mom and dad. So there's 5 of us. When my dad got paid, it meant we were going to Bonanza to eat. Right? I mean, that's what it was. It was Bonanza. And then, as kids, we go down that, you make your little order. And I'd get the chopped steak. It was years later before I realized it was just hamburger. Yeah, I thought I was getting something special when I'd ordered chopped steak. And then you go down that little line, and there'd be all the little pudding cups and jellos and everything, and you could kind of pick what it was. But we'd go to eat Bonanza, and then we'd go across the road to the movie theater, and we'd watch a movie. And that's what payday looked like. It was something extra, right? We looked forward to that. I always remember my father saying, he'd take us out to eat at Bonanza and to the movies for 5 of us. He'd say, man, that sure shoots a $20 bill. Now I'm giving my age away here because that's what it cost for 5 people to go eat into a movie. It was $20 hard-earned money. But that's what payday was. And we love those rewards, right? I mean, sometimes we base our credit cards on who has the best rewards, right? We give away our personal information to grocery stores just so we can get that reward, right? Again, I'm of the generation where I couldn't wait to get up in the morning to see if I could get that toy in the bottom of the cereal box. My mom and dad had to put down rules at our house that you couldn't stick your hand in the box and fish around for it, that it had to fall naturally out of the box. I can't tell you the number of times I was like shaking it, like, it's falling naturally, as I was twisting the box trying to get that toy. Some of you don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? Do you? Okay. I think they even give toys in the bottom of the cereal box now. It's probably illegal. Some lawyer probably ruined it for us all. Some lawyer probably ruined it. But the Bible teaches, the Bible teaches us there are 2 different kinds of rewards. There's the kind of rewards that we can expect here and now on this earth, and then there's the rewards that we can get later, that we get at some point in the future outside of this life. In Deuteronomy, the 11th chapter, verses 13 through 15, and it shall be that if you earnestly obey my commandments, which I command you today, to love the Lord your God and serve him with all your heart, with all your soul, then I will give you the rain for your land in its season, early rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your grain, your new wine, and your oil, and I will send grass in your fields for your livestock, that you may eat and be filled. See, that was a promise that God was saying that some rewards come now. The latter rain, the earlier, I'll give you that rewards now. That's something going on here on this earth right now for us. And the Bible is saying that God was promising that there's going to be some rewards that happen here. We read again in Galatians 6th chapter, 7th verse, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he may also reap. Right? We talk about that verse. We talk about that verse quite often. Those are rewards that happen right here, right now, for us. Those are the rewards that we can look forward to right here and right now. But the fact is that most rewards, we can't really expect to get them here and now and on this earth. Most rewards are actually reserved for a later time, for another place. We read about those also. In 2 Timothy, those of you who heard me give many messages, you know this is one of my favorite verses, series of verses. I love Paul's relationship with Timothy, and I speak about it often. There's so much there. But Paul is speaking to Timothy in the 2 Timothy 4, 6 through 8. He says, "For I am already being poured out as a drink offering." This is Paul, who's in jail, knows he's about to be killed. "I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing." I want you to catch that. Did you hear that? The Lord will. The Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me. See, Paul's talking past tense. Paul's not talking about something he's going to receive on this earth. He's not talking about a reward that he's going to receive in that jail cell that he's in. He's talking about what he will receive. He looked forward to the reward he was going to receive. It was the reward of the race he had ran his entire life, all the things that he has done. You talk about a man who did not receive his reward on this earth. And look at Paul. He didn't have a home. He was misunderstood. He was persecuted. He had poor health at times. Was killed for his faith. Look at Stephen. Stephen was preaching the right message. Did he receive his reward here? No. He was stoned to death. Do you think he received his reward somewhere else? We know so. Because the Bible said his actions caused Jesus in the throne room to stand in observance of what the reward that was coming. What about Peter? Did he receive his reward here or somewhere else later? Somewhere else later. So we have all kinds of examples. We have all kinds of examples where the Bible not only talks about the reward that we're going to receive here, but the reward that we're going to receive after. In modern years, there's lots of opportunities and people that we could talk about. There's a pastor who was born in 1903 in China. And his last name is Ni. It's Pastor Ni. Do you all know who I'm talking about? Anybody read any of his works? Yep. Yeah, his first name was Watchman. What an interesting name, right? And he's a pastor in China. He's born in 1903 and 1927. You do the math. He was a young man. He began his ministry. And that man traveled all over China, building up churches. All over the world, preaching the message. A lot of books he wrote himself, but then there were also a lot of books that people wrote of him because of his preaching and teaching. He would preach and teach, and what he said and spoke about was so impactful that people would literally write every word that he said and then publish it, his words, because we're talking again about a time pre-World War II. And in 1949, when the communists took over China, he could have stayed gone, but he didn't. He felt called to go back to all the churches that he'd built up in the time period in which they were living under communist rule. And when he went back, he was arrested. In 1952, he was arrested to be re-educated. And this man of God, this Pastor Ni, this man of God who spent his entire life preaching the word and building up churches, spent the next 20 years being re-educated until his death in June of 1972. You know, he wasn't allowed to even see or interact with people. The only person he was allowed to see was his wife. They would let her come and visit him every now and then. But other than that, he was kept away from people. When he died, they didn't even tell people that he died until they had already cremated him so that nobody could see him and observe him. But that's a man who didn't receive the reward for all the work that he did on this earth. You know, when they gave his final personal possessions over to his family, the thing of significance that he really owned, there was a scrap of paper and kind of large caricatures, because it was written in Mandarin Chinese. And it was written with a shaky hand. He left one last thing, and they said it was under his pillow that he slept on. And I'll read it to you here. It said, Christ is the Son of God who died for the redemption of sinners and resurrected after 3 days. This is the greatest truth in the universe. I die because of my beliefs in Christ. That was it. That's all that was left. But that's what that man stood on to the very last day. What kind of reward do you think he received? What kind of reward do you think he received, right? When he came into heaven. Because he surely did not receive his reward on this earth. But he received his reward in heaven. You know, people may question. I'm sure there's some people in that situation might question it. And in the book of Isaiah, we read in the 49th chapter, the 4th verse, Then I said, have I labored in vain? Have I spent my strength for nothing and in vain? Yet surely my just reward is with the Lord, and my work with my God. I can reassure you that man's payday was coming. Those apostles' payday was coming. And I can assure you, because the Bible says, that your payday is coming. Your payday is coming. You may get a payday here, but you have another payday coming there. We may get some things here, and glory to God that when we do, but we also have things coming there. You know, Paul talked about running a race. He talked about running a race. I've finished the race, and a crown lays before me. I just want to pause for just a moment and just say, if you're going to run a race, you have to be in the race. Right? Some of us haven't even started the race that we've been called to. And some of us are watching it on TV in our comfy chairs and wondering, do you get a prize for watching the race on TV? Do you get the medal for sitting at home and watching somebody else run the race? See, there is a reward for each of us, a prize for each of us, both here and in heaven. But as Paul said, you have to be running the race. We have to get up and run the race. We can't sit comfortably in a chair and watch somebody else run the race for us. I'm fond of saying that God doesn't have grandchildren. It's the same concept here. God doesn't have grandchildren because each one of us is his child. And the only way we get to Christ is to God is through Christ. But we have to do that, each one of us individually. We can't rely on mom and dad, grandma and grandpa's religion to get us there. There are no grandchildren there. There are no people sitting on the side winning the prize, running the race. I'm going to appropriately amend my sermon to make sure that we good time, because I think the Holy Spirit has already begun working through our worship. But I've got a joke and a story before I finish up. Which do you want first? Joke. Yeah, good, because that's what my note said. I'm so glad you said that. Otherwise, I would have had to wait for somebody else to give me another option. Okay, here's my joke. You ready for it? There's a rich man. He dies and goes to heaven. And he's walking down the golden streets and past all the mansions. And finally goes down around the corner and smaller houses, and finally gets to a really humble little cabin. And I said, okay, well, this is your cabin. And the rich man said, I lived in much better than this when I was alive. And he said to him, well, you didn't give us a whole lot to work with up here then. Now, come on. That's a funny story, but it's also a question. Did we take all the materials God gave us to build something here or something there? Did we take everything that God gave us and did we use it to build something here for ourselves or something for his kingdom? Were we building kingdom buildings or were we building personal buildings along the way? And it's not just possessions before we all go, whew, so glad I'm not the rich man. You're rich with your time. Yes. Oh, I know. I just stepped on somebody's toe. Let me come over here. I'll just step on Jimmy's toe. Yeah. The time that we have. Look, money is just a way for paying for other people's time. Let's just call it what it is. Your time. Have you been using your time, the material that you've been given, your time on this earth, have you been using it to build things for yourself or in the kingdom? I mean, that's my joke, but it's got a good line to it. All right, so here's my story. I've got a story I'm going to tell about, it has 4 main characters in it. And it's not Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw. See? The people who laughed are the ones that were in the leadership training a couple weeks ago. I made them, for those of you who didn't go, I made them listen to an entire book on the first morning. An entire book they had to listen to, an entire book. About cheese, yes. About somebody moving cheese around, and there's these 4 characters. It's not Sniff, Scurry, and Hem and Haw. This story, the main characters, I can my glasses out here so I don't mess up my notes. Main characters here is a man named Mordecai. His cousin raised as his daughter named Esther. Yeah, that gets confusing, doesn't it? I had to do the math on that because it says his uncle's daughter, and I went, I think that's a cousin who he raised as his daughter. So I think that's how it is. So his cousin who he raised as his daughter, named Esther, a king by the name of Ahasuerus. I had to look that one up had Google play it over and over for me until I had it right. Ahasuerus. A king named Ahasuerus who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. He was a Persian king. And a noble named Haman. Those are our 4 characters. Some of you may already know this story. I hope so. It's a pretty good story. But I'm going to give you the abbreviated version of it, okay? Because I want to get to just one point. I don't want to read you the entire book of Esther. The king, from now on I'll just refer to him as the king if that's okay. I've already pronounced his name once. The king was looking for a new queen. Esther, who is exceedingly beautiful, was a candidate for that role. Easiest way of putting it. So she was in the running to be the next queen. Her father, Mordecai, they couldn't let the king know that she was a Jew. And they couldn't let the king know who her family was, or she would be disqualified, right? She wouldn't be seen as somebody who could be the queen. So she's in this running for this, but Mordecai, he worries about her because Mordecai's a good guy. Not only did his uncle and aunt died, they were killed, and so he raises their child and raises her as his own daughter. And he worries about her. He wants to make sure, but he can't expose who she is, so he goes to the gate to see if he can get any gossip, right? If he can hear what's going on with Esther. How's Esther doing? Is she still in the running? Is she okay? Is she happy? And so he stands at the gate. And one time while he was at the gate, because he's sitting around at the gate, and he overhears this plot actually to attack the king. These 2 people were going to attack the king, and he overhears it, and he gets word to the king through 2 different eunuchs that the king trusts, and lo and behold, they find it to be true, and they kind of spoil the plot, and the king doesn't get assaulted or attacked. And then they go on a little further, and Esther, she kind of gets picked to be the queen. She's selected. He finds favor in her, and she gets to become the queen. But then enter our 4th character, which is Haman. He's the villain of this story. And so Haman comes in, and Haman hates Jews, and he loves power. That's just kind of his thing, right? That's kind of who he is. And he, trying to get some influence with the king, he convinces the king to make a law that all Jews can be attacked anytime by anybody and take their possessions. It's pretty much open season on the Jews, and the king believes them and passes this law. And so while Haman is doing all that, he runs into Mordecai at the gate one day, and everybody else is bowing low to Haman, and Mordecai doesn't. So all of a sudden, Haman's all upset about it, and he goes home and tells his wife, and the wife does what all good wives do, and she says, you should build a gallows and just hang that man. So he does. She builds a gallows and hangs him. To hang him, not to hang him. And so they build this gallows. They're going to hang Mordecai. They pass this law that you can attack Jews anywhere you want and kind of take their possessions. And then Esther steps in. And she reveals Haman to be the bad guy that he is. But before she reveals it, this is the part of the story I want you to get to. He just built the gallows. And the king can't sleep that night. The king can't sleep that night. And so what does the king do when the king can't sleep? He says, hey, bring me a really boring, dry book to read. Bring me the Chronicles. Bring me the day-to-day activities of the kingdom and let me read this. And then we read that in the Esther 6th chapter, verses 1 through 3. That night the king could not sleep. So one was commanded to bring him the book of the records of the Chronicles. And they were read before the king, and it was found written that Mordecai had told Bigthana. I want that name. Right? If I'm going to get one of these names from the Old Testament, I want to be like Bigthana. I know it's not how it's pronounced, but to me that's how I remember it. Bigthana. Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs. Never mind, I don't want to be Bigthana. I've changed my mind. You can explain that to your kids when you go home. The doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on the king, see, I got to go back to my pronunciation. Ahasuerus, there it is. Then the king said, what honor or dignity has been bestowed upon Mordecai for this? And the king's servant who attended him said, nothing has been done for him. You see this? You see what's going on here? All of this is going on. And then God intervenes and gives the king a restless night. It just so happens him to get the book of the Chronicles of the events, and while he's reading through it for something to find to be bored, he's like, oh, I never really knew the details. When those people were going to hurt me, I never really knew the details of who it was who provided that information that saved me. I didn't know that. And so he's like, I wonder what it's kind of like, can I just be real honest here? It's kind of like me on Christmas time. Donna, what do we get them? You know, what did we buy him for Christmas, right? And that's what the king's saying. He's like, hey, what did we do for him? What did I do for him? And then the servant's like, nothing. Nothing was done for him. Nothing was done. And so the king's like, okay, we need to do something. And so he's like, okay, who's in the middle of the night? Who's in the courtroom that can come give me advice? Because that's what the court people did. They were around to give the king advice. Who's in there? Lo and behold, who's the only one there in the middle of the night? Hamas, exactly. Hamas is just hanging out. You know, I guess he got a little afraid to go home after his wife's first response was build a gallows and hang this man. But he's there, and so king brings him in, and the king says to Hamas, he's like, what would you do? What should we do for somebody who the king wants to honor? And Hamas is like, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. Because who else could the king like more than me? And that's what he's thinking. And so he says, I tell you what you need to do, king, for this person. You need to give them a robe, and not just any robe, but your robe. You need to put them in your robe. And you need to have them paraded in front of everybody on a horse, but not just any horse, the horse you ride. You see what he's doing? He's wanting everybody to see him as the king, right? So he's like, put him in your robe, on your horse, and put on his head your symbol of your authority. And don't just do all this. Send one of your princes to make this happen, to show how much authority this is. And so the king's like, that's a great idea. In fact, I'm going to send you as my prince, and I need you to go do all of this to Mordecai. I need you to go do all of this. You just mentioned to Mordecai. And we read that in the 6th chapter, verses 7 and 9. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought, which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of the one of the king's most noble princess, that he may array the man with the king's delight to honor, then parade him on horseback through the city square and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man who the king delights and honors. And so Mordecai's sitting there at the gate, and Haman shows up, and has to do all of this, right? He has to put him in the king's robe and all this and parade him in front of everybody. And then that's when Esther reveals to the king, Mordecai is trying to kill me and my people. And the king's like, whoa, 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 what are you talking about? And then she reveals the fact that she's a Jew and that this law that Hamas is wanting to do is, and so king rushes out of the room mad, and Hamas is like begging, like, please, queen, and I guess he's like real close on her begging, and then when the king comes back and sees him touching her, then he gets mad, like, how dare you touch my queen? And so he's actually hung on the gallows that he built to hang Mordecai. And the king declares to Mordecai, the house of Hamas is now yours. Not just the home, but the house, meaning all property and all possessions of Hamas are now yours, Mordecai. Are you following me? Including his wife, who wanted to hang him. We're not even going to go there, Pastor. It's a completely different sermon. Mordecai had to wait for his payday. His good deeds weren't even rewarded. Think about it. He raised the daughter of his uncle, treated him like his own daughter. And when she came into popularity, he couldn't even acknowledge that they were family. But he was okay with that. He stood at the gate. She becomes queen. He didn't even get like tagged in the Facebook post or nothing. Right? Didn't even get acknowledged. He saves the king from attack. Doesn't even get like the royal fist bump. Nothing. Until the time came. Until the time came for his payday to come. That is the message here. I'm going to go off script here for a minute, because I feel like we need to understand something. His payday had already come. He just hadn't got to the place in his time when he could receive it. You following me on that? The payday was already done. The check was already written. The payday was already there. Mordecai just hadn't got to the place in his timeline to receive it. It wasn't created when he got there. It was created before he got there. But he wasn't there yet. Time was created by God as a tool for his redemptive story. God doesn't live in time. We live in time. Right? God created time for his redemptive story. We have to understand that. And if we're walking down this road of time, it's because that is the way that God is delivering his redemptive story. We get to certain places in time where the provisioning has already been provided. We're at that place in time. The best place I can describe it, and I sure hope this doesn't come across as anything other than how Brett's brain works, it's a helium balloon. I get to this place, my provisioning is there, it's floating above my timeline, like a helium balloon with a string attached. But I've got to reach up and take it. I can be under the provisioning that God has created. I can be at the place and time where that provisioning is needed. But if I don't use faith, if I don't activate faith to reach up and grab that provisioning and pull it down from heaven into my timeline, it doesn't take effect. How many times have we walked down the timeline bumping our head on the provisioning that God has placed there because we didn't have the faith to reach up and go, that's mine. That's mine. It was placed here for me. Before my existence, it was placed here for me to pull down from heaven into earth to use for his glory. That's Mordecai. Mordecai gets to a place, he did the right thing, and when he needed it the most, it was already waiting on him. He just had to reach up with faith and pull it down. There's this whole conversation he has with Esther, which is, I encourage you, go back and read this book of Esther. He has this whole conversation with Esther where Esther's afraid to go to the king because she's like, oh, he could kill me. He could kill me. I'm not even allowed to approach him. I've not even seen him for 30 days.
And Mordecai says to him, the woman he raises his daughter, he says, if you don't do it, it'll still be done. God just won't use you to do it. And he lays it out solid for her. See, the provisioning was already there. Mordecai knew it. He knew the provisioning was already there. He just simply says to Esther, do you want to be the instrument of God, or do you want God to pass you by and use somebody else? Because he'll get it done, with or without you. And she stepped into that role and led her people to where God needed them to be. I've gotten way off track in my notes, but that's okay. Hebrews 6:10, it says, for God is not unjust to forget your work or your labor of love, which you have shown towards his name, in that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. God doesn't miss payments. He doesn't miss payments. The things we do don't get forgotten. They don't get missed. He's not a man that he would forget. I guess I'm speaking, and I'll close out soon here, but I guess I'm speaking to the Mordecais in the room. The people who feel that their actions have been forgotten. I do the right things. Nothing ever works out for me. I've done the right thing to this person, and still they treat me this way. I tithe and I give, and yet I don't seem to have enough. All of our rewards don't come here and now. And they don't come the moment we do the right thing. They come at the place in our timeline when God has provisioned it to come. And sometimes they don't come until we're in heaven. Like Stephen, like Peter, like Pastor Nee. Sometimes our greatest works don't get rewarded until we're in heaven. But even the ones that happen here, they don't happen immediately. I guess I'm speaking to the Mordecais in the room who feel like I've treated everybody right, and yet things haven't worked out for me. I'm sure Mordecai felt like that when he was standing at the gate. But there'll come a time, the Bible promises that there'll come a time when you will be rewarded for your work, for your efforts, for doing the right things. It's our job to do those things that we're commanded to do, to love each other, to love God, to live our lives in a holy way, set apart, made special. And let God worry about when the rewards get dished out, knowing that they will be dished out. But let God worry about when they get dished out. He'll know what needs to be dished out and when. Lest we end up like the rich man in my joke. The beautiful life here and stored up nothing there. Because I promise you, there's going to come a time when somebody delivers for us the robe of the king. Not just any robe, not a replica. The robe that the king wore. The one that he earned. One day we'll be clothed in that robe. One day we'll have a crown placed on our heads. One day we'll sit in the authority under the sign of the king. One day we'll be paraded and it'll be announced. This is what is done for people who have done right to the king. One day that reward comes, whether it's here or then. But here's the part that we have to do. We have to run the race. If you want to be somebody who can stand at the end of their life and say, I've run the race, I have fought the good fight, and there stands before me a reward. You don't get that from the armchair. You don't get that from a comfortable seat in a church service. You get that from stepping into the ring and doing what God has called you to do, whatever it is that God has called you to do. Whatever it is that God has called you to do. You get that by stepping into the race. So the reward is guaranteed. Whether it's here or there, we're promised the reward. The question is, are we running the race to get the reward? That's our part. Are we on the timeline? Are we using our faith to reach up in those situations and go, that one's mine? I'm calling that one down. Look, I don't know what your balloon is in my terrible analogy here. It's my best analogy, sorry, but it's probably not theologically, but it's probably a better one. That's my analogy. That's how Brett's brain works. I don't know where you are in your timeline, and I don't know what balloon is hanging above your head that you're going to need to reach up in faith and grab. It could be healing. You could have a situation with your health, and then you're standing there going, I am sick, and I don't know what to do. And standing above your head is a balloon that your faith needs to activate as you reach up and pull it down from heaven into this world, the provision that God's already placed there. For some of you, that balloon and that timeline where you are, it may be financial. It may be, I don't know how we're going to keep the lights on this month. There it is. By faith, I reach and pull it. The promises of heaven down to earth. For some of us, it's a relationship that we don't have, or the strengthening of the relationship that we do have. And for some, it's called into something that we call ministry. And I don't know if that's working with children, or working with the elderly, or working with people in addiction, or working with people who are coming out of abusive situations, or reaching, or maybe you're really ambitious, you want to reach out to lawyers and doctors and such. There is a place for all of us. I don't know what that balloon is for you. I only know this. The only way you get it is reaching up in faith and pulling it down. So the question is tonight, if there's a balloon over your head, is tonight the night that you reach up in faith and you pull what has been provided for you in heaven down to this earth? That's the question I have for you. And if tonight's the night, we will be glad to pray with you and to agree with you. And if that is for healing or for whatever situation it is, we will go before the throne of God with you as you reach up in faith and pull down the reward that was promised you.